What's up, everybody? Thank you for being here with me again on another episode of The Liquid Culture. I am Mitchell Sharrock, and it's Tuesday, which means it is Wine Tasting 101 day. Today is all about Cabernet Sauvignon. I know a lot of you guys out there are big Cab Sav drinkers, so if you want to see the way that I taste Cabernet, go ahead and click the link in my profile, scroll down to part 5 of my Wine Tasting 101 blog series and check that out, as well as popping over to TikTok for a couple of 60-second wine reviews where I do 2 from California and the one in today's video from Australia. So stay tuned.
The Liquid Culture.
Alright, so the day you guys have probably all been waiting for, Cabernet Sauvignon, one of the most widely planted and most widely consumed red wine grape varietals out there. I know a lot of people out there who either watch the show frequently or maybe are just popping in for the first time, are big Cabernet drinkers. Me personally, not one of my favorite overall grapes, just because I tend to find that the majority of the expressions that are available out there are a little bit one-dimensional, and there's a reason for that. So Cabernet Sauvignon, let's talk a little bit about what it is, where it comes from, and all that good stuff. So Cabernet is one of the kind of the most prominent kind of big Bordeaux red varietals for blending in Bordeaux, France. So when you hear of Bordeaux as it relates to the Old World, you're talking about the region of Bordeaux in France, where Cabernet and Merlot are the 2 predominant blending grapes there. You will really never ever find them as a single varietal like you will here in the States. You kind of have to know which area of Bordeaux you really like, because some areas will be more predominant with Merlot, some may not have any Cab at all in them, and the reason for the blending of Cabernet is because Cabernet can be a pretty one-dimensional grape varietal. Typical flavors and aromas range from pretty much just your black fruits, so you've got blackberry, black cherry, plum, and then you've got oak. They take on oak characteristics really well, so you see a lot of things like baking spices, you see cedar, you see toasty, vanilla-y wood characteristic depending on where it's made and kind of how much oak is being used. And then you can have things like pyrazines, which a lot of people pick out in wine as like a green bell pepper or jalapeno pepper. That is a very common flavor and aroma for the Bordeaux varietals, which are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, which is kind of the parent of a lot of grape varietals. Petit Verdot, Carmenere, these are all grape varietals that you can experience that kind of green vegetal bell pepper kind of characteristic with. With Cabernet Sauvignon, you don't normally get it in abundance. I know down here in Texas, we grow Cabernet Sauvignon, and it actually acts a little bit more like Cab Franc down here than it does in other parts of the world. So Cab Franc is probably the grape in this family of grapes that has the highest percentage or the highest kind of detectable amounts of pyrazine. And here in Texas, our Cabernet Sauvignon grows in a way that produces a lot of that pyrazine character. Other places where Cabernet Sauvignon is very popular, obviously California, Napa Valley. That's probably where a lot of you watching are familiar with your Cabernet Sauvignons from. And even in Napa, you have a lot of blending of Cabernet Sauvignon with those other Bordeaux varietals as well. You'll see it listed as either a Bordeaux blend or as a Meritage blend. Other places that it's grown in Chile, it can take on a really nice kind of herbal quality. I spent a little bit of time in Chile and actually quite enjoyed the Cabernet and Cabernet blends that I tasted there. Other places that it's grown, Australia. So big part of Shiraz blends there in Australia. You'll see just straight Cabernet Sauvignon, and you'll see Shiraz Cabernet Sauvignon blends as well. Today's example, actually from Australia. So we have got the Paxton 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon from McLaren Vale, which is a small appellation in South Australia, which not only is geographically located in South Australia, but is an actual sub-AVA or really kind of a broad appellation in Southern Australia called South Australia. McLaren Vale right inside South Australia. So The reason that I picked this bottle of Cabernet to shoot for you guys here today is because this is a very unique and exciting expression of Cabernet Sauvignon for me. I could have very easily popped a couple of bottles of, Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, but I think you guys watching are probably all very familiar with what that tastes like. I mean, most of the time, Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon is blackberry and cedar. That's why I don't drink a lot of Cabernet, especially out of California. I know that a lot of people love that style of wine, but for me, it can just be a little bit uninteresting. So the bottle that I picked today would probably be very tough for me in a blind tasting to pick as a Cabernet Sauvignon, because it really is not necessarily without those characteristics, but they are certainly not at the forefront of this wine. And we'll get into that a little bit whenever we get into our process here, our little step-by-step tasting with intent process that we have been talking about in this series. So let me talk a little bit about Paxton. So Paxton is a grower and producer in South Australia, like I said, McLaren Vale. They are organic and biodynamic in some instances. They have minimal intervention with their winemaking process, and this particular bottle was only aged for 9 months in a combination of new and used oak. So why do I bring that up? A lot of times with Cabernet Sauvignon, both in Bordeaux and in California, you have a lot of kind of heavy oak influence into that wine. Reason being is that Cabernet Sauvignon is a very highly tannic grape varietal. It's very full-bodied. So not only does it benefit from that oak aging in a lot of cases, but it can absolutely withstand a long-term oak aging if the wine producer chooses that they want to make their wine in a style that has a lot of oak influence in it. So this one, 9 months, not a ton of time relative to other regions that grow Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's in a mix of new and used oak, so you're not having as full of a concentration of those new, fresh, toasty, vanilla kind of characters that get imparted into the wine. So that's a little bit about Paxton and a little bit about the process that was put into making this wine. Let's dive right into the steps here. So we're looking at the color. So unlike last week's Pinot Noir, and if you guys are watching weekly Pinot Noir Wednesdays, those are very light wines that you can see through. This wine, tip it down, I'm looking at my notes here, and I cannot see through this wine to see what's written on the paper. So, I mean, this is a dark, it's ruby, so this is for sure. We talk about with Pinot Noir, sometimes it can lead to that garnet, which is a little bit more kind of rusty kind of red. This one is absolutely in that ruby category. It's a dark ruby. Certainly not the darkest red wine that I have ever seen, but it certainly has some color to it. As far as the nose, let's dive in on that step. So yeah, so this wine, again, I picked because I've tasted this wine before, and it's an incredibly interesting version of Cabernet Sauvignon. Yes, there are some undertones of black fruit. You've got this kind of very ripe, soft, kind of mushy red to black cherry. You've got some black plum skin and some black berry there, but those are not the predominant flavor, or at least the predominant aromas. The predominant aromas here are very much like a spice. Honestly, when I stick my nose into this glass, it is straight up curry. It is tamarind paste. It is turmeric. It is cinnamon. It is paprika. So much spice characteristic, and I'll preface this by saying baking spice is a very common aroma and flavor with Cabernet Sauvignon, mostly because it is imparted from the oak. But usually those baking spices come in the form of clove, cinnamon, You've got like vanilla, nutmeg. This one is so unique in that everything about it originally jumping out of the glass to me is very much like non-standard baking spice aromas. So that turmeric, that tamarind paste, those things are what really kind of jump out. There is some like allspice for sure. I mean, curry, I say curry, but curry is something that it has so many different spices blended into it. And this is that great like amalgamation of all of those different spices blended together. Structure. Let's talk about Cabernet Sauvignon general structure. I already mentioned very full-bodied, very high tannin. When it comes to Cabernet Sauvignon, the reason that people love Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon so much is because those wines are approachable and ready to drink when young. Right now, you very easily could be drinking a bottle of, let's say, 2017, 2016 Napa Valley Cabernet, maybe a little strong in tannin and full-bodied still, but definitely ready to drink now and showing some expressions of some of that fruit characteristic. In Bordeaux, you'd be crazy to be opening a 2017 bottle of Bordeaux right now. Those wines are so austere and so tannic that they really need extra time in the bottle. So Cabernet Sauvignon generally is going to be very high in tannin, very full-bodied, and depending on where it's grown, whether it's a cool climate, a warm climate, those characteristics are going to change a little bit, and the flavor profiles will change as well. So the warmer climate, we've talked about this before, the warmer the climate, the riper the flavor profile is going to be, and a lot of times the higher the alcohol, so that shows fuller body on the palate. This one here, McLaren Vale, is a warmer climate, certainly warmer than Bordeaux. However, this is still nice and restrained. So again, minimal intervention when it comes to the winemaking process here, but you're looking at a 14% ABV, nothing crazy. Cabernet Sauvignon can absolutely be one of those varietals that can skyrocket an ABV if it's picked on the riper end of the spectrum. So, this is a 2017 bottle. Tannin is, I would call the tannin medium. I wouldn't even call it medium plus. Very plush on the palate, mid-palate, very, very full of kind of supple, velvety, fruity character. That kind of blackberry and that plum and that cherry are definitely showing more on the palate than they do on the nose. I get a slight hint of the cinnamon on the palate, but that kind of turmeric curry kind of vibe is not so heavy on the palate as it is on the nose. So I would call it medium plus body, so definitely on the fuller end, the bigger end of the spectrum, but not as big as especially like a California Cab can get. Medium tannin. It's there, but it's not like sucking my mouth dry. It's not austere in any way, and it's not covering up any of the fruit characteristic and flavor in the wine, and about a medium acid. So this is a really nice, well-balanced Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a screw top from Australia. It's easy to find on wine.com. I think that this is a really, really fun expression of Cabernet Sauvignon from a region that you might not, if you're big California Cab drinkers, you might not be so familiar with Australia Cabernet. This is one that I would absolutely seek out as something that's a little bit more unique for your kind of normal Cabernet Sauvignon lineup, and one that's not going to break the bank too much. In terms of ageability, I think that this one could age a little bit, but I'd wonder, what am I looking for in that aging process? Am I looking for anything to kind of emerge or anything to go away? With me, the overall structure of this wine right now tells me that it's ready to drink now. I wouldn't really be too interested in aging this like I would maybe a higher elevation California Cabernet, or like I would a Bordeaux Cabernet heavy blend. As far as food pairing is concerned, so Cabernet is known worldwide. Both Bordeaux blends and single varietal Cabernet Sauvignon are known worldwide as your steakhouse wine. Nice fat, grilled, juicy, fatty ribeye, baked potato, asparagus, those pyrazines that you can find in the Cabernet family of grapes. Those pyrazines play really well with green vegetables. This wine, however, is not doing that for me. It doesn't feel like steakhouse quality Cabernet Sauvignon here. I tell you what this really makes me want. This really makes me crave a plate of German sausage. Here's the reason why. I love currywurst. If you're a fan of currywurst, which is essentially just a German sausage that's got a curry ketchup dipping sauce with it, usually served with like French fries or some kind of potato starch. To me, I'm thinking like I would love to have a plate of like a German sausage plate with a couple of like a brat, maybe a knockwurst, a couple of some German potato salad, some sauerkraut, a couple toast points of rye bread, some mustard, and then the overall kind of curry characteristic that's in this wine would really kind of add that kind of currywurst flavor, or not necessarily flavor, but it gives you. You take a sniff, you take a bite, you take a sip, and you've got all those kind of characteristics that kind of counter each other and play well with each other, that I think that this could be a cool wine to pair with something like a German sausage plate. So, that's Paxton Cabernet Sauvignon for Wine Tasting 101, Wine Tasting Tuesday. Tasting with intent, guys. We are going to continue this series going. Like I said in the intro, check out TikTok. I'll be doing the 60-second review of this wine and the other two wines that I just showed you from California. We'll throw some quick 60-second wine reviews out on TikTok. And keep an eye out for Pinot Noir Wednesday tomorrow. Thanks for being here with me, guys. Really, really appreciate it. As always, Mitchell Chirac for the Liquid Culture. We'll catch you next time. Later.